Hi everyone, welcome back to part 3 of this tutorial. So in part 1 we did the background, and part 2 we started on the flower, and today we're hopefully going to finish our flower. Everything that I'll be using along with the reference photo and the line drawing for you will be down in the description below, but I'm just going to jump right into it. So I'm going to go back in with our light magenta, which is 119. And I'm going to start with this, and I'm going to lay it in here a little bit. So I want to work on some details with these 3 front petals here, and then these ones are sort of a little more in the background. So I just want to get a little bit more in here. And I really hope you guys are liking this tutorial and are following along. And again, I'm going to lay some over here. So I just really want the colors of these 3 main petals to be really vibrant and to sort of pop. And I'm going to go in with the Pink Madder Lake 129. And I'm going to start putting this color in as well. And it kind of overlaps into our other color that we just laid down a little bit. So I'm just sort of making little strokes going in there, but I'm following the direction of the lines on the petal. So this is the fun part where we get to go in and adjust our colors. Do we need to mute something? Do we need to brighten something? This is where we can add any colors that we may have missed in our first few layers. Or our first layer, I suppose, because this is technically our second layer here. So I'm sort of adjusting the undertones of this petal a little bit. I want it to be just a little bit more pinky to bring out some of those pinks. So this is what this color is going to do. I've also got my fuchsia here, so we might put that in a few places where we really want to pull out some pinks as well. And I'm going to keep with this 129, and I'm going to start working on some of these back petals as well. So this, I can see this color kind of comes along here. Okay, and I'm gonna just layer over this spot here. And I'm gonna go along this edge just a little bit, but I'm not gonna press hard because remember in part 2 where I said, you know, I want these edges to be more defined and these ones back here, not as much. So I'm not gonna press hard to make that nice defined edge. Okay. So then I'm going to go in with, so I've pulled out this magenta as well, 133, and I'm going to start putting in some darks with this too. And I'm just very light pressure with this because this color is pretty punchy. But I really want some of these darks to really give some good contrast here in these petals up front. And I'm just really trying to see how this petal curves and follow that. Okay, and I'm gonna go over here underneath of this petal as well with this color. So when you're working with colored pencils or any medium really, it's usually all about adjusting. You might lay down a color and think at first, okay, like this is a great color, but then as you're working on your piece and you get your other colors in, you might realize, you know, you need to bump up your shadows or make things a little bit brighter. So you're constantly like reassessing your piece as you go. Okay. And I'm going to go back in with that red violet, 194. And I'm going to lay this in next to where I put the magenta. And I'm still leaving a little bit of space for a lighter color. Okay, and then I'm going to fill in this bottom part down here as well. Okay, and here as well. Okay, then I'm also going to take this color and start filling in this shadow that we have coming down here. And also over here towards this side. Now this petal's a little bit more, like this section of it's a little bit more in focus than here. So I am going to go along that petal line a little bit. Just to define it a little bit more. And you don't have to be following along with the colors that I'm using. You can choose any colors that you want for this. This is just what I happen to be using. Okay. I'm also going to go back in with that light magenta and just fill in this little part here. I'm going to make sure my colors overlap here a little bit because there is sort of a nice smooth transition. And I'm going to take this color just on the upper edge here as well. Okay. And then I'm going to go in with the Crimson 134, and I'm going to start filling in the rest of this petal here. And I'm going to go over top of where I put that other color as well. Okay, and just a hint of this color down here. I'm just lightly glazing over it just to create a slight shadowing, almost like a vignette. There's like just a little darker area around this petal. Okay, I'm going to continue this color here where we've got like this shadow overlapping on this petal. Okay, and I'm also going to put this color over here. And I'm going to grab that pink matter, like 129, just quickly, and just make some little areas here where there's just a little bit of light coming in. It's a little bit more light, just a couple little areas. It sort of mixes in there. And I'm also going to go over top of this color that we put down. And then I'm just going to lightly sort of use this color to help blend these two colors together, that dark and the pink color. So I'm just still doing this very lightly because we're still going to blend this out after. But I just want the transition area between these two colors, not quite a stark line. Okay. Now I'm also going to keep this crimson color and sort of start laying it in here a little bit. Sort of towards the back part of this petal where it's overturned, but I'm going to keep some light area here in the front. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just fill in this area. So I'm sort of leaving just a little edge up against the edge of this petal here. And I'm going to use this color to help transition a little bit in here as well. Okay. And I'm going to go in with that gray too, and just make sure that's the 271. I'm going to make sure that this area down here, we're not going to lose this color. Okay. Now I'm going to take that new fuchsia color, which is 123, and I'm going to start glazing this in a few areas because I want to pull out some brights into this flower, a little bit more bright pinks. So I'm going to start glazing in this petal here, and on the edges where we left it a little bit lighter, that's where I'm going to start. And I'm going pretty light with this at first because it is a pretty bright color. But you can see the nice contrast that this is giving, like a nice color here. Okay. And I'm also going to take this color along this edge here, just very lightly. And I'm sort of pushing just a little bit harder to create that defined edge here. And I'm just looking at my reference photo and trying to see where that pink light is kind of shining through on the petals. And that's where I'm putting this. And I'm going to glaze a little bit here too in this middle section. And as well as put a little bit just underneath. There's like this little line here, and I just want to put this color underneath of that, just to show a little bit of variation in color here. Okay. And I'm going to do the same over here a little bit. So sort of in this middle area, I'm going to glaze this color over top too. And I'm going to bring it down to the bottom of the both petals a little bit. Sort of where that gray starts. Okay, and I'm also going to take this color into this area here, and I'm really going to keep it quite light because I just want to glaze a pink over top. I don't want it to completely cover up everything we've already got going on. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing down here, just glaze this color a little bit. Sort of like in this area here where a little bit of the light is shining through and the petals are looking just a little bit more pinky. And just a little bit down here. Okay. So I think that's starting to look pretty good. I'm gonna go back in with that permanent green 266, and I'm just gonna glaze over this again, just to really bump up the brightness of this stem. And then I'm gonna go in with that olive green yellowish 173, and I'm gonna keep this sort of in this area, like the middle of the stem, but like this half of the middle of the stem, if that makes sense. And I'm, again, just keeping a very thin line of that light green on that side. And as I go down further from the stem, the area I'm putting the dark pencil is a little bit smaller. So it's sort of just a line here, whereas I get up further, it's a little bit thicker. Okay. So I think I like where this is right now, and I'm gonna take my odorless mineral spirits and I'm gonna go ahead and blend everything out again. And then once it dries, we'll come back, put any last minute finishing details, and then this project should be done. So I'm probably gonna speed up most of this because you have seen me blend out with odorless mineral spirits before. And if you're not using this, then go ahead and use any method that you are blending. But I am just gonna mention one thing in these petals here where they're a little more blurred out. I'm not gonna try to go along this defined edge. I'm actually sort of gonna push it over the edge a little bit. And if you're just using your pencils to blend, then just sort of lightly glaze over that edge, because I don't want a defined edge. That's the only difference here that I'm gonna do. So I'm just gonna go ahead and speed this part up, and we will come back after. Okay, so now that our flower's dry, or you've done whatever blending technique that you're gonna do, I'm gonna go back in with just 2 pencils, and I've got my Polychromos white, which is 101, and my crimson, which is 134. And I'm gonna use just these 2 pencils to put in a little bit of detail on the flower, and then we will be done. So I'm gonna start by taking this one, the white, and just going along the top edge of this petal here. And I am pushing a little hard because I do want sort of a bright area along the edge of this petal. Now, if you've done too many layers and your Polychromos doesn't show up, that's okay. You can use a waxed base pencil. So if you have Prismacolor or Luminance, or even if you have the light fast white, I find that is a pretty opaque one as well. And I'm just going to go in here just along this area just to brighten it up even more. And if none of your colored pencils will show up over top of this, you can use a gel pen, or you could use some gouache, or you could use whatever you have on hand. Now I'm going to start to put in some of these like lines in our petals. And I don't want to cover the whole area, but I do want some texture to start showing. And I'm basically going from the edge and dragging my pencil in. Because the Polychromos are pretty sharp, I can get some nice sharp lines. And again, I'm going to go this way, and I'm following the curve of those lines. So they sort of curve this way. Now I'm going to avoid this shadow here for right now. Okay, and same with this one. So I'm going to go from this edge and bring some of these white lines into the color. And I hope you can see this. If it's not showing up on camera, I do apologize, but this is what I'm doing. Okay. And I'm going to go over to this petal as well. So where that dark line was, I'm going to start underneath of it. And I'm sort of curving my white lines with that dark line that there is in the petal. So they're going to curve this way. And then as we get to that dark line, they're going to curve the other way. So it's almost like an S. Up here. And I'm going to go along this top edge, not all the way. So I'm going to sort of start around here and just follow along. And I'm trying not to make it too much of a perfect line. So I'm sort of like slightly curving the pencil back and forth. And then, so as we start to get here, the curves start to go in a different direction. So I'm going to start down here. And if you're not able to get these lines with your pencil and you need to sharpen it, go ahead. And I'm also going to do the same in here where this highlight was. Now, again, I'm not covering the whole area. I just want to show a little bit of texture in there. And I'm going to do the same thing along this edge of the petal. So again, I'm just going to go along, make a little highlight. And it doesn't have to be a straight highlight. You can break it up and miss little areas. So it's not like a perfect line, you know what I mean? So you're sort of doing some little dashes, breaking it up. And then if it's easier for you to turn your image, go ahead and do that. And then I'm just going to do some little lines. Okay. And I'm just going to take that white and just help blur this edge out just a little bit. So I'm just overlapping onto the petal and onto the background just to help with that blur. And I'm going to do the same thing here. And I don't want to press too hard because I don't want there to be like a halo around the petals, but I just want it to slightly lend to the illusion that these petals are fading into the background. And then where we have this little white spot here, I'm going to go in and press a little harder and just burnish in this area. And the Polychromos isn't super opaque. So if you need to go in with something else to get this done, that's fine. And I'm going to do the same thing with this edge, or this whole petal, really. And it might not be super noticeable on camera, but little things like this, you know, is what helps your images pop a little bit more. And where it gets into the darker area, I want to be careful and really not press at all. I'm just letting the weight of the pencil kind of do the work, because I just ever so slightly want to blur that line there. And you can even take your finger, blend it out a little bit, or a blending stump or something. Okay. Then we're going to go in with this crimson, and I'm going to start in the middle petal again. And there's just a little bit of those dark lines coming out from this line here on either side, so I'm going to get those in. And I'm trying to, you know, follow the direction that they're going in. Now this is sort of like a loose, realistic style. If we wanted to do this super realistic, you can certainly continue on doing this. But I don't want to make this series, you know, forever long. I find people get bored after a few videos of the same thing. But if you like the longer video series, like if you would rather me go more in depth and do, you know, 4 or 5 videos on a subject, please let me know, because I certainly would do that if I had enough interest. So again, I'm curving those lines. I'm going with the petal curve. Now these ones I'm not taking up as far, and where I'm closer to that line, I'm gonna go a little more harder because I really want them to show up there. And over here, I'm gonna do those lines. Okay, so I can hope you can see how it's sort of starting to come together. And on this petal, I'm gonna work my way from the outside and do those lines and meet sort of where we had our white lines going. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing here. So from the dark, I'm going to work my way out into our lighter lines again. And again, I'm trying to follow the curve of the petal, so I'm really looking at my reference photo. And I'm going to work into this little highlight here. So I'm not covering, you know, all the spots. You see, I'm just doing a few lines. I'm sort of trying to make them sort of messy, sort of together, if that makes sense. And I'm going to do the same thing on this petal here. And I'm just going to kind of define this top edge a little bit better because we're sort of losing it with that other petal there. And at this stage, I'm only really pressing as hard as I need to get the marks to show up. So I'm going sort of like a medium to hard pressure. And again, I'm curving here where I need to. And as it gets straighter, doing a little bit straighter. Now I'm going to come back into the white here. There's not too many striations, but I'm going to do just a little bit coming out of here and just a little bit coming down here. And just a little bit, like to almost help show the curve of the petal. And then again, I'm going to do the opposite with this color. So I'm going to have it come down. And up. Okay. I might just do just very, very light here, like almost so it's not showing up. And I'm just going to make this top edge just a little bit lighter. And if you feel like you have to go in anywhere and adjust, do that. If you want to make it a little bit lighter. I really want to get this edge nice and light. Because this is our main petal. So I want the bulk of the detail here. And I'm just getting these little bottom edges. And I'm going to go a little bit more in here where I feel like it needs to be just a little bit brighter. And then I'm just going to go in with that crimson again and just sort of almost blending the edges a little bit. There. So, and you know what? My last little thing, I'm just going to make a little bit of a brighter edge here. So I'm not pushing too hard. because I don't want it to be a stark white line, but I just want a little line of white going down our stem here. That's what it's called. So just like that, just to show that, you know, we've got some light coming in that area. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it for this tutorial. I hope you guys really enjoyed this. If you did, please let me know down in the comments if you want me to do more things like this, and I certainly will. If you haven't yet, then I would encourage you to please subscribe, like the video, hit the notification bell so you know when I do post my videos and my tutorials. And thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye!